This is the world of Valku, the world in which my fantasy series of books take place, and I made it because I needed a visual representation and to make out where points were in the world. But today we're going to talk about how to make your own world map. Valku started off as just this little piece of land here, and it kind of grew out to here, and then it went down to here, and it went to there, then it went to here, and then that was the first book. And I had this drawn as a map like this. That was all well and good, but gradually the adventures enveloped the whole of the world, including the poles. And so I had to make a map to demonstrate, and I made it out of a ball. I made an atlas and a globe. I am Atlas. When I made a dungeon to be played in one night, I made the dungeon with all the little vases and all that, and I used this generator to create the map, the basics, and then I brought it out, made it into 3D. But it also does these maps, and you can go through all these different connotations, atlas and map and treasure map, or you can make a topographical map or something like that, and it will come up and it will develop this huge map, this entire world with cities and things. And there you go, that's your entire map, whether it's for your D&D game or it's for your writing or whatever. It's made for you. Then you've just got a place in which your heroes start off and they adventure to the far distant parts of the world. Or it might just be a treasure map. Go to the pub, go to here, find this, and there's your map. Be as vague as you want. You can, of course, do it on AI. Get the AI to do it rather than just pre-made computer programming. You can do this. Put in sort of your criteria, fancy map, fancy world, find pre-made prompts and so forth, and give it a style. Give it as much detail as you can. Hit go, see what comes up. Of course, AI, I mean, it's basically just copying other people's things and amalgamating hundreds of things. I would take this as a start point, and then I would redo it. And of course, you can do it yourself. So how would you? First off, you need to work out what sort of map you want. And the best way to do that is to look up other people's artwork in their books, in famous books, like Lord of the Rings. There are many versions of the Lord of the Rings map, tend to be quite dramatic, quite detailed and quite old-fashioned. You can find a treasure map like the map in Treasure Island, indications of ships and flags and swords and things like that. Icons and objects. If you want it to look like a treasure map, 6 points, go from here to there, go to the pub, find this, go to that, X marks the spot. You could go simple, just a very small space, like 100 acres of wood, where Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin lived, Pooh's house, Piglet's house, the sand pit where Roo plays. And it shows where everything is. It's simple, it's prettily drawn. It's not a map as you would usually expect. You could go accurate, like a street map. I would do if I had a map for my book, The Liquorice Box. I'd have a map of the west of London. A perfect example of this is Charles Dickens' London map. Perfectly accurate map for the end of the 19th century. Still fairly relevant today. I looked on it and figure out where I live, how it looks pre-war, because this is all rebuilt. But it shows lots of places, and a number of places in his books where it names the actual road still exist, where Nicholas Nickleby lived, and Little Dorrit, and all of those sort of things. Nancy's steps on London Bridge, all of those points all referenced in this amazingly detailed map. Or you could go whimsical and weird. If you like the Edge Chronicles books, those change continuously. The maps and the lands change all the way through. So each book has got a different map. And they're odd. And they're not looking down, they're looking across at the edge of the world and how the cities grow and so forth. Similar to the Winnie the Pooh, the Land of Oz map is kind of a diagram rather than an accurate map. It shows kind of like where things are generally. The Yellow Brick Road showing, and Munchkin Land and Quadling. and it's very picturesque, and it's also quite colourful. It'd have to be a yellow brick road. Equally colourful is the land of Narnia. It's very colourful. Big swathes of green, then white, and then yellow. The Great Eastern Ocean is green, not blue. It doesn't have to match as we see it now. It can be very different. Or you could go epic and medieval and incredibly detailed, like this map of Westeros from Game of Thrones. This is a fan-made map, but it's incredibly detailed, and it shows all of the houses, all of the flags, all of the who owns what, where, and so forth. Or you could go to one of the online map generating. When I did the dungeon to be played in a day, I used Donjon, a quite well-known map and generating site. But you can end up with vast worlds, forests and lakes, and it's enormous. Millions of cities and all the names made for you should you want. Incarnate is great, it's really detailed, and you can make some amazing maps, but you are going to pay for it. World Anvil. I had an account with World Anvil for about a year, and I just didn't use it because there's so much. It is brilliant, and I would recommend it if you've got an entire campaign or an entire world and you want to write down every single detail. But you're going to spend hours, days, months. You'll use it, a year's subscription. You'll use it if you're going to subscribe to it. It's about £29, £30, something like that. I had 50% off at the time. And yeah, it was just too much and too involved, and I was doing way too many other things, so I didn't use it. But if you're looking for a really detailed, right, every single character, every single place, every single street, every single tavern, World Anvil, you can't go wrong. And there are plenty more. Alternatively, you could just do it on Minecraft and make your own world in a very square way. Take years to make it. Or you could just do it by yourself. I mean, you could just sort of get a sheet of paper and go, there's your world. You know, really basic, and then you just draw it in. So let the pen do something. And then that would be like a cove, and then what would this be? You could make some sort of weird, it's kind of like the drawing something out of scribble. And there'd be a line of mountains. And then you'd have a city here, maybe one there, and then this would be like forest, and then there'd be an island there, and then you got your map. See, then you get a dog who sits on everything, and she puts her paw there, and then destroys everything. This is now Dog Paw Island. There's a map. Or you could take an old art piece that didn't really work, and with a white pen and trace some lines, if the pen will work. Draw in some land. See what comes from tracing and see what happens. I'm trying to find a pen that actually works. Just for simplicity's sake, turning an old piece of destroyed artwork into a map. The start of another project here could go very industrial. very man-made, and use these things to be the islands. So there you go. What'd you do? No one says it has to be organic, and you think, I hate that word. Yeah, you find a land like this and you'll be like, there is no way this is natural. It's man-made, or there's your land. You can make it a bit, over time it's kind of, the sea's grown in and taken it around them. But then you realise that entire land that of just really random shapes. I mean, you could certainly make a world where they've spent their entire life like here, but then here is a massive mountain that peaks to the highest points, and no one's ever climbed it, and they climb to the highest points. Once they're as high as they can get, they look down on, and it's very definitely man-made, and there's like no way that's ever naturally happened. It's got ridges and steps, and you take a rubber eraser, whatever you want to call it, you take out those pieces and you realise that the rubber's really dirty and needs to be cleaned off. But then makes for the part of the story. Smear. It's just known as the smear. It's just grey land. And you get a pen and you join, and you take this to here and that and that. Your adventurers discover that the world is way too man-made to be natural. So there's your land. You have a city here, a city here. You have the smear, which is like a mass of rocks, more like scree mountains. Then you have the steps and the pillars, which are big cliffs jutting out. Maybe they jut out more into the sea. And then, yeah, you've got this big mountain. That noise used to drive my dad crazy. He hated it. He'd do it for so much more. And of course, you could always go and use that as the map. Maybe this is your path. They start off here and they travel and they have to get across to here, which means there's a boat and then another boat, and then they get to here.
Then they go here and they realise they've gone the wrong way, and they go down to here, and they go down to here, and they go all the way back up to here and discover that's the wrong way. So they get a boat back here. Then they go down there.
And then they go to here and they get supplies and they live there for a while. And then
Itchy feet get at them and they head off again. And they, once again, false turn back. They follow the trail along the ridges. And they discover stuff here. There's something there, and they're there for ages before they end up getting back.
they get across the gap and they're stuck there for a while.
And then they try and get around by going down here. But that clearly doesn't work.
Eventually, they realise what they've got to do. They've got to go along the path. There is no way around it. They've got to go around the path to get to where they're going. And then they discover the top of the mountain. And then they realise that the whole of the world is man-made. And then they have to come back down. And of course, this time, they know where they're going. So they head back. But they don't go back to where they were from. They go back to the main city. And then they go to the edge. And they live out the rest of their life down here on Smiley Face Island. We've ended up with this, the map, and the story, the route for our intrepid adventurers to go. Whether this is a book, a story, or just a world for a D&D game. There's your map. So, which one do you like best? Do you like the AI versions, the randomly generated on computer versions, or the draw around random objects, make it up as you go along kind of map? Well, whichever one it is, whichever you like. Hopefully this helps if you're struggling to come up with a world or a map or something, and maybe you're a D&D dungeon master or a storyteller, you know, leader of an RPG game, and you're trying to envision where your intrepid adventurers are going to go. Well, get some random objects on a table, draw around them, and 20 minutes later you'll have a map. And I hope this was fun, entertaining and useful. Another random something from London Creative. If this was good and it does help, give it a thumbs up. Put your hat on straight. Leave comments down below. How do you make your maps? Do you make maps? What's your process? Do you draw around objects? Do you have some really intricate way of doing it? Let me know. And if you're not already and you like these random things in amongst the making models and painting flow art and all of that, all of this stuff, then you should hit subscribe. It's like 80-something% of people are not subscribed. If you send this to somebody who you think might be interested, that also helps. And yeah, I will be back next time with another something different. Until then, hope you're well, and I shall see you then. Bye. Wanting to use it for your fantasy world and put Solo, I know you're there. I'm talking to people. You talk to people. Stop that. We know you're there. We know. I've not stopped stroking your belly. Please stop punching me every time I move or breathe. It's very definitely man-made, and there's like no way that's ever naturally happened. I've got deja vu. I've done this before. Right, we have the usual, we have masses of screaming kids, but today we have a special treat for you. We have the Reclaim the Streets in the park with a tannoy. So if you hear then that's what it is. Also, your next project is to go through the box of pens and work out which ones are dead. Clearly, don't leave your Copic markers in a drawer for a couple of years because they die. One last point before we go. There is a link to a blog which I've had bookmarked for ages, and for this very purpose, maps, and where a lot of the suggestions have come from is on this blog. The blog is called thebookdesigner.com, and I'll put a link down below on your own, like this. What's the matter with you? Why are you in grumpy mood? What? I'm stroking your belly. I never work with dogs.